Mockingjay is very meh. Since I'm talking about Mockingjay, I might as well talk about the whole series. I think the whole Hunger Games series is very meh. It's the latest young adult novel-based fad that everyone forgets about a year after the last film comes out. It's not as bad as like Twilight, at least it has things going on. The first Hunger Games is pretty bad. Many people made comparisons to Battle Royale, which is a much better movie. And to be fair, the movie isn't just Battle Royale again. It has a message about the government or 1% or something like that. My main issue with the movie was all the technical stuff. The effects suck, the music is bad, the fucking camera work is awful. Everything has to be like this. Oh shit, walking down the street, it has to be shot like this. Catching Fire improves on some of these things. There's some great moments in that movie, especially this scene. The action's decent, there's a lot of good performances, and the movie isn't just Battle Royale again. The movie actually pushes the story forward instead of just doing the same thing again. You should try it sometime.
Well, I never write messages.
Then we get to Mockingjay. And of course, they gotta split it into 2 parts. And that's the point where I gave up on this entire series completely. Not from a financial standpoint, but from an artistic standpoint, it makes no fucking sense at all. It's completely unnecessary. But the story is so long and epic, you can't fit it into one movie. You can easily fit it into one movie. Every movie is 4 hours long at some point. That's why you hire an editor. You hire an editor to cut all the shit out of the movie that you don't need. What you're essentially watching when you're watching these 2 movies is a rough cut. This part 1, part 2 nonsense has never worked. Ever. It always feels slimy. Gee, I can't wait for Infinity War. Can the studios at least admit they do this because they like money? Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 was weak. You know why? Because it was half a movie. And I have to pay full price for it for some reason. It's all set up and no payoff, and right as the payoff is about to happen, cut it off. You need to pay $12 more to watch. Why are you paying twice the price to watch a rough cut of a 4-hour movie? Wait till it goes on Netflix, or if you can't wait at all, pirate the fucking thing. I'm not saying that's what I did to see Part 1, Part 2. Okay, so although I don't agree with this business practice at all, I will judge the movie as a movie, because it's not the director's fault. I'm sure the director just wanted to make one movie. So now we get into the dilemma of how do I judge this movie? Do I judge it as an entire movie, Part 1 and Part 2? Or do I judge each one separate? If we're gonna look at Part 1 and Part 2 as their own movies, Part 1 is way too drawn out and boring with no oomph at the end. Because they gotta cut it off for Part 2. And Part 2 is nothing but that. Part 2 is nothing but action and shit hitting the fan, which gets exhausting after a while. Nothing happens in Part 1. Every character dies in Part 2. Part 1 has little to no action, and what little action there was in that film served almost no purpose to the story. Like, there's that scene where the hospital blows up. I guess shooting the bow and arrow at the thing was kind of important to the plot, because then she had to give a speech about it. I guess you didn't need an action scene for that. They could have just blown up the hospital, but okay. And then there's the scene where they're attacking the facility, which, like, they didn't even need in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna judge it as like a whole movie, Part 1 and Part 2. So Act 1 and 2 are a little bit too long, but then we get to the climax, and I guess that's where this movie starts. And when you judge it like that, the movie's okay. There's some good action in this movie, and unlike the first part, most of it has consequence to it. There is a lot of death in this movie, which I kind of liked. I would have liked it if it was spread out a little bit more. Like, Part 1 had some death and Part 2 had some death, but that's the fundamental flaw with making a movie 2 parts, so why the fuck do they do it? I like the ending of this movie. It's bittersweet. Of course, Francis Lawrence directed this film. I believe he directed Catching Fire. He did not direct the first one. The director of the first Hunger Games is some moron. There's nothing, like, special about the way this is shot. I picture, like, a director like Alfonso Cuarón coming in and really making this movie great. Especially during, like, the battle stuff. It reminds me a lot of Children of Men, which is a much better movie. And then, really, the performances in this are great. Philip Seymour Hoffman, Julianne Moore, PETA, what the hell is that guy? Josh Hutcherson. And of course, Jennifer Lawrence does a great job. Really, this series would not work without Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss. So overall, as a movie, it's a very decent movie. It's very decent. There will be a fan edit, I am almost positive. So I suggest you wait for that. Wait for some fan to take part 1, part 2, cut out all the fluff, and just make one solid conclusion to the Hunger Games. They did the same thing with the Hobbit movies. So would I recommend Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 7? Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2? No. It's a fine movie, but I hate this Part 1, Part 2 shit. I suggest you don't watch it until a fan edit comes out, or if you really can't wait, pirate it like I did. I mean, never mind. Cut that out.